Justice for one, justice for all. A society in which all persons are afforded fair justice. As you've likely surmised, justice takes the spotlight in today's show. I'm Adrian Atkinson, and I'll be your guide as the Justice Minister himself takes the hot seat on issues, providing timely answers on the current dispensation of law in the country. Also in the show, a closer look at the new manual to guide those who dispense justice on behalf of the state. Welcome to Jamaica Magazine, the show with information to improve your life. That unfolds right now.
This is the Aedes aegypti mosquito that spreads the Zika, chikungunya, and dengue viruses. Search for its breeding sites and destroy them. A message from the Ministry of Health.
In 2015, groundbreaking legislation were passed in Parliament. One of them was the Jury Amendment Act. A number of courthouses were also refurbished and reopened. To explain the significance of these accomplishments is Justice Minister Mark Golding. He's next with Ian Boyne.
Thanks for joining us for Issues and Answers. I'm Ian Boyne. Today our focus is justice, the critical area of justice that relates so much to our everyday lives, so much to the things that we desire. We have with us the Minister of Justice, Senator Mark Golding. We thank you for your company. Good to have you on, Minister.
Pleasure to be here, Ian.
The administration of justice is such a crucial area. That's an area that is intimately connected with the reduction in crime, the reduction in the murder rate. What has the ministry done in the last year to deal with this issue?
Well, 2015 was a busy year for the ministry. We passed a number of important pieces of legislation to try and increase the efficiencies of the court processes, the efficiencies of trials. So we passed the Evidence Amendment Act, which allows evidence to be admitted by agreement, whether it be facts or documents that are not in dispute. In the past, one had to call witnesses to prove facts or documents which weren't even in dispute, which was expensive and time-consuming. It also facilitates the more easy admission of computer-generated evidence and provides for a new procedure whereby persons in custody don't have to attend court for pre-trial administrative hearings like mention dates and so on. They can designate counsel to appear on their behalf. We also introduced the Administrator General's Amendment Act, which is a transformational piece of legislation dealing with persons' estates who die without making a will. They no longer, the Administrator General no longer has to get a grant of letters of administration from the court before she can start administering a deceased estate. She now is empowered under the Act to issue her own instrument of administration and start the process of getting in the assets and distributing them to beneficiaries significantly. And it also, that legislation also tackles a problem that has been with us for decades of what we call multi-generational estates, estates where successive generations have died without administering the estates legally. And those estates are just tied up in problems, legal knots. And we provided a mechanism that allows the Administrator General to cut through those knots by issuing, again, an instrument of administration, designating it a multi-generational estate, and she can then get in all the assets and distribute it to the remaining beneficiaries who are alive today. And that will affect several thousand families and many, many thousands of people.
And that has implications for economic activity.
It does.
Because there are a number of poor people who have land that is tied up in disputes. That if that land now becomes live asset, that's
exactly
money in their pocket,
you have
economic investments.
Yes, you have assets, land and other assets that are sterilized economically for decades or generations. With this procedure, then those assets can be sold, they can be mortgaged, they can become a live collateral for use, in people's lives and for their own economic advancement. Then we passed the Jury Amendment Act, which has adjusted some of the rules around impaneling of juries to make it easier to impanel juries. We have found that, especially in multi-defendant cases, the jury system was a source of significant delay because of the problems of impaneling a jury, and matters that were ready for trial were often not able to move forward because of problems with impaneling the jury. So we've adjusted those rules. We've also eliminated some of the exempt categories of persons who don't have to serve on the juries, in particular public servants now. So the civil service will now be like anyone else, ordinary citizen who can be summoned to give jury service. We also introduced legislation to provide for discounts on sentencing where a person pleads guilty. And the earlier in the proceedings they plead guilty, the better the discount they will get. And this was important because with the mandatory minimum sentences that apply to most gun offenses, for example, people weren't pleading guilty even if they had if there was a very strong case against them, because they were basically taking their chances that the case would collapse or whatever. And this provides an incentive to get those cases disposed of quickly by giving them an incentive to plead guilty if they know they are guilty and that the case against them is a strong one. Then we've introduced some legislation which is going to overhaul the administration of the Supreme Court, establishing a new court administration division under the Chief Justice within the Supreme Court structure, which will have an advisory board to help her with the strategic aspects of administering justice, and she will also have the assistance of an executive legal officer, which is a new post at a fairly high level to support her with administrative matters, and that there'll be a new chief magistrate post created, who will be sort of will be the administrative head of the magistrates, reporting to the Chief Justice. And that chief magistrate will also have an executive legal officer to provide administrative support at that level. So collectively, that will strengthen the whole administrative capacity for running the courts, which is a big machine, a big bureaucratic machine, and needs to be well managed. And we had some problems with the court management services because it didn't have a legislative framework to support it. There were a lot of issues that weren't clear about who was responsible for what and so on. That had been established about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, but it didn't have the supporting legislation. We now have established that. So legislatively, those were some of the things that we did last year, which was collectively, I think, quite significant. Then, of course, we opened...
We're going to take the break at this point. Minister of Justice Mark Golding telling us about a raft of legislative measures that were taken to strengthen the administration of justice, to cut down on the time that it takes for cases to be processed in our courts. When we come back, there are other issues that the minister will deal with.
Motorists, know your rights as road users. If you're stopped by the police in a road check, the police have the right to ask for your driver's license and vehicle documents. If you don't have the documents on you, you can ask for 5 days to provide them at a convenient police station. If you don't have vehicle insurance, you can be prosecuted and face the court. If you fail to renew the registration license, the police are entitled to seize your vehicle. If the police wish to search your vehicle, they should tell you the reasonable grounds for wanting the search. If you are given a ticket, sign it only if you plan to pay the fine and not contest the charge in court. And please be reminded, children under 18 years must wear a seatbelt, even if they are seated in the back. Know your rights. Knowledge of the traffic road code makes it easier to work with the police as they do their job to make the roads safer for you and everyone else.
Welcome back. We're speaking to Minister of Justice, Senator Mark Golding. And Minister, at the break, you were going on to mention.
I was having dealt with the legislation that was passed in the justice sector last year. I just want to mention a couple of other things. I mean, we opened, after many years, finally, what we call Public Building North, which is a building to the north side of Barry Street, which is joined by an overhead bridge with the old Supreme Court building. And the new building is a state-of-the-art facility with 7 new courtrooms, additional meeting rooms and chambers for judges, and perhaps most importantly, a new registry facility, which is supported by a lot of storage area and a new high-density filing system, which we procured and has been installed. And the registry had been a source of a lot of inefficiency where it was before. It was very cramped and inadequate. And this new registry is much more commodious and I think will help a lot in ensuring that files don't go missing and all that sort of thing, which has been a problem in the past. So we're very pleased that that building is finally open. And we are hoping that the Accountant General, the new premises that have been identified for the Accountant General will be ready by the middle of this year, which will enable the Accountant General's department to move to those premises, and that will create space that the Court of Appeal and the DPP's office can be expanded into, because they are very cramped and we need to appoint some additional judges for the Court of Appeal so they can have a third panel and also expand the cohort of prosecutors in the DPP's office. So those are some things we're working on right now. And of course up in at the top of Hagley Park Road, by Halfway Tree, that old Ministry of Housing complex is now assigned to the Ministry of Justice, and we're about to start the work to convert 2 of the buildings, one of the buildings down at the bottom, into a 2-story court facility which will house the corporate area traffic court, and that can move from South Camp Road, which is also very cramped and inadequate, and a new coroner's court, which is even more urgent now that we had the fire there. So there's quite a bit going on. And of course in the rural areas, we fixed up Santa Cruz Court. We put in an external elevator for the disabled to make it the first court of its kind in Jamaica, where disabled persons with physical disabilities can actually can attend court upstairs. We fixed up Black River, the court there. Some significant work was done, and we've identified land where we want to start to build a regional court complex in either in Mandeville or in St. Anne, or in Montego Bay. We haven't nailed down the land in Montego Bay yet. We have some land we're looking at, but we need to have access to it, where we want to build a full complex and that will be in the future, but that's the plan. In the meantime, we opened the Western Regional Registry of the Supreme Court for the first time in Montego Bay, so that litigants in Montego Bay can file their court documents there at that office without having to send them to Kingston themselves. And it also houses a new office for the Montego Bay Legal Aid Clinic and a new Western office for the Administrator General's Department. So all of that complex is something we were quite pleased to open in July, I think it was July in 2015.
We've just completed Restorative Justice Week. What have been some of the significant initiatives in that area, and why is that a critical area?
We think restorative justice can be a significant aid to the overall challenge that Jamaica has in dealing with violence and violent crime. Restorative justice is a procedure whereby persons in relatively minor disputes work them out in a structured way. It's a kind of ancient system of justice and avoids conflicts escalating through reprisals and so on.
Yes.
We've been at this since about 2012. We started launched the program. We've trained a couple hundred restorative justice practitioners, and we've rolled it out in, I think, 11 communities, supported by, I think, 8 centers, restorative justice centers. We want it now to take it to a national level, and that requires legislation to recognize it as a procedure that the courts can refer cases to.
Cabinet just dealt with that last week.
Cabinet, yes.
Yes.
Actually, on February the 1st, they approved the legislation that had been developed, and we will be tabling that in Parliament as soon as Parliament reconvenes, and that will allow the courts to refer appropriate cases to the restorative justice program, whether it be when the case first comes into court or after the case is concluded but before sentencing. And it even provides for, in the rehabilitation of convicted offenders who are inmates in prison before they're released, to use restorative justice as a tool for helping the reintegration of former offenders into the communities from which they come. So there are different points of intervention that the program will work at. And we think that it can help, Jamaica to get past this problem that we have of resorting to violence too quickly in the way we deal with disputes between us and others. So, I'm quite pleased that the legislation has been approved by Cabinet in Restorative Justice Week, because it will represent a significant step forward for the rollout of restorative justice nationally in Jamaica.
Minister, we have other issues to talk about. Jamaica moved up 16 places in Transparency International's Corruption Perceptions Index. So we need to have you next week to talk about that along with other issues. So Minister of Justice Mark Golding will be back with us for next week's edition of Issues and Answers. We thank you for having joined us this week. Until next week, Ian Bourne wishing you a pleasant day.
No one is above the law. We encourage all Jamaicans to join the fight against corruption, organized criminality, these nefarious activities that stymies our country's progress. I want to encourage all Jamaicans to call. We have a secure line, 1-800-CORRUPT. Call anytime and we will treat the information received with the highest standard of confidentiality. We need your help. We want to elicit your support.
Call 1-800-CORRUPT. That's 1-800-267-7878. Be the change. Report corruption today.
The Justice Undertakings for Social Transformation Program has officially launched the Office of Director of Public Prosecution's Prosecutors Manual for Jamaica. The manual will help to promote transparency, consistency, and fairness in decision-making. Here's more.
Government's plan of action for a reformed justice system has seen the implementation of several measures. These include the refurbishing of courthouses and instituting policies to strengthen and regulate the management of administrative duties. The latest development is the creation of a Prosecutors Manual for Jamaica, the result of collaboration with local and international partners. The 263-page document is the first of its kind for the country and was launched in January 2016 by the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. The manual outlines clear guidelines for prosecutors to execute their duties.
This manual is a culmination of consultation and codification of rules and protocols to be employed by prosecutors in Jamaica. It is therefore one very important means by which Crown Counsel at the DPP's office, clerks of court in the resident magistrates' courts, or any other external attorneys at law in different entities or by themselves who operate with the express fiat of the DPP seek to conduct business.
There are 15 chapters to the Prosecutors Manual for Jamaica. Chapters 1 to 3 deal with the Code of Conduct for Prosecutors, guidelines about the decision to prosecute cases, and adherence to the prescribed principles of disclosure.
Chapter 4 deals with guidance in relation to bail and related issues. Chapter 5 deals with plea discussions. Chapter 6 contains guidance and directions in relation to certain critical subjects, including the treatment of children, unrepresented accused persons, firearm offences, capital murder, and the proceeds of crime. Chapter 7 deals with mutual legal assistance and extradition matters.
Chapters 8 to 12 of the manual provide detailed guidelines for relations between prosecutors and judges, jurors, other government officials, witnesses, and victims. Meanwhile,
Chapter 13 provides guidance to prosecutors in their relations with other lawyers. Chapter 14 provides an outline of statutorily and non-statutorily prescribed relations between prosecutors and the police or other investigators. Chapter 15 deals with relations between prosecutors and the media. This manual benefited from collaboration with many stakeholders whose input was sought to make it a living document and a real and practical document.
Funding and technical support was provided by the Canadian government's Justice Undertaking for Social Transformation JUST program and the British government. The United Nations Development Programme, UNDP, assisted with the publication of the manual.
This bold step will help improve public confidence in the administration of justice.
Progress is being made in the prosecuting services and our thinking and our professionalism in the 21st century.
This is an important achievement, as this groundbreaking manual documents an operational model, provides clear guidelines to ensure the consistent application of agreed standards and procedures.
It represents a significant achievement for Jamaica to have a document like that developed and published, so that those who have published it can be held to account by the standards that they have set for themselves, and their willingness to accept being assessed by reference to those standards is, I think, an important step forward for governance in the country.
The Ministry of Justice, strengthening the delivery of justice to Jamaicans.
This is the Aedes aegypti mosquito that spreads the Zika, chikungunya, and dengue viruses. Protect yourself from the bite of this mosquito. A message from the Ministry of Health.
Know your numbers and control the keys to a healthier heart. Know the numbers for your blood pressure, cholesterol level, blood glucose level, and your weight and body mass index. Give yourself a fighting chance. Find out the risks they represent and what you need to do to stay healthy. Talk to your doctor and start making healthy lifestyle choices to prevent a heart attack or stroke.
February is Heart Month. This observation brings into sharp focus the importance of taking care of the heart. A few important matters of the heart. The human heart is located at the center of the chest. The muscle mass is greater on the left side, and the apex of the heart is pointed slightly to the left. The heart works 24 hours a day, pumping oxygen and nutrient-rich blood to other parts of the body. What you should always think of, especially as you decide what to eat, in coronary heart diseases, fatty substances are built up around the walls of the arteries. The fatty buildup can break open and lead to the formation of a blood clot that seals the break. This clot usually stops blood flow. When too little blood reaches the heart, chest pain may occur. If a blood clot suddenly cuts off most of all blood supply to the heart, a heart attack results. So before that happens, visit your nearest health center, especially if you haven't checked your vital organ recently. This is necessary to preserve your life as we seek to make Jamaica the place of choice to raise families.
I said be careful what you teach your little children. Make sure I know something to hurt them. Mind what you saying to my sister. She could be the next Prime Minister.
Sexual abuse is always a very difficult thing to confront, particularly when the alleged victim is a child. Parents, if it is that you suspect that your child has been sexually abused or is in a vulnerable set of circumstances where an abuse may occur, we encourage you to have dialogue with your child. Take the child to the pediatrician who normally attends to the child. If there is no such pediatrician, take your child to the clinic, to the hospital, to some medical practitioner who can do an assessment for you. It's very important as well that we don't just look at the physical side, but we also seek to find the kind of psychosocial support that a child may need. Does the child need a session with a counselor? Does the child need to speak with a pastor who is used to dealing with these issues? Does the child need to get that ongoing psychological support to assist with the healing process and also to assist the child in becoming strong enough, as it were, to deal with the various processes that will follow once it is that you suspect an abuse has occurred? If it is that the child actually discloses when you engage the child in discussion that yes, mommy and daddy, I was abused. We encourage you to entertain the child, to listen to what the child has to say to you, and to take it very seriously. So we really urge you to have those discussions and to seek guidance in terms of, do I speak to the police about this, which we always say you have to, because once a child has been sexually abused, it's a criminal matter, and it means that once at all possible, the child should be assisted to go through the processes so that the perpetrator can in fact be held accountable. Support your child and let them understand in very clear terms that they are not the cause or the reason for this abuse having been perpetrated. But the most important element is to support them, get them access to the services that they need, and give them a chance to have you give them that listening ear. For these tips and of course any other information that deals with children, that is anyone under 18 years, please feel free to contact the Office of the Children's Advocate. We're at 72 Harbour Street, downtown Kingston, and our numbers are 948-1134, or website www.oca.gov.jm. Thank you.
Watch what you teach your little children. Make sure I know something to hurt them. Mind what you're saying to my sister, cause she could be the next Prime Minister.
Mr. Shirley, me get the invitation to America. What?
You know a passport? A passport is one of the most important forms of...
Here at PICA, we believe in excellent customer service. So when we wanted our customers to know about us, we approached the GIS and they delivered, and we got excellent value for money. And so we encourage you to go to the GIS, a one-stop shop for media services. They have print, radio, television, and so much more.
Before me married and go, hug up mango tree. Me will lips up, me one. I just month before last the girl Liza married. And she, Maga, you see. Every night as she one day a yard. She no sleep till daylight. So before me married and go, bites me fingernail. Me will lips up, me one. Before me married and go, bites me fingernail. Me will lips up, me one.
Our final message for you today. I dream my painting, and then I paint my dreams. For more information on the work of the justice system or the prosecutor's manual, click on our webpage, jis.gov.jm. We're also on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook, so log on and stay in the know. I'm Adrian Atkinson. Have yourselves a great week.
This has been a production of the Jamaica Information Service, the voice of Jamaica.